life. Good morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and love. Good morning, sun.
Greetings. Grab a cup. This is going to go down quite the rabbit hole. So I've added a rabbit. Um, this started from a forum post that I saw, a Business Central Community Forum post, where someone was having an issue, and I think I mentioned this in a prior live stream. Someone was having an issue, or maybe as a blog post, can't remember anymore. They were trying to call a Business Central Web API endpoint using BizTalk, and they were having some issue that turned out to be related to the date filters they were using. So it was overly restrictive or invalid date filters, and they weren't getting any results. But while reviewing that forum post and doing some research as part of that, I noticed something I'd never seen before. So that led to me looking into that, testing it, and running into an error, which sent me down an entire chain of rabbit holes in the Business Central Web API. So I thought I would share that journey, and thanks to AJ Kaufman for helping me understand what's going on here, and also to Jeremy Viska for adding a little context as to how the Business Central Web API engine appears to work. So with that, so this is the issue that I encountered. And the thing I learned from the forum post was that you can add $expand equals asterisk at the end of the Business Central URL. So presumably this is an OData query filter syntax. And instead of just saying $expand equals, customer information, one thing or maybe even two things, you can add an asterisk at the end of the expand query filter to have the API expand all navigation properties. This is not something I had ever seen before. Now, I personally wouldn't recommend doing that because you could be expanding a dozen different things that you don't actually need, but it's an interesting or intriguing option, shall we say. So I thought, that's interesting. Let me try that. Well, I have a blog post on this. So I have a blog post on using the $expand query parameter, and I have a separate blog post that I just did about the error that occurs if you try to use the $expand equals asterisk query parameter as well. So that's what these URLs are here. And so if you try $expand equals asterisk on the sales credit memos endpoint and others, as I'll explain, a few others, if you try to do that, you will get this error. And this is with Business Central, I think it's 19.4 or 19.5, whatever is in production as of March 6, 2022. Application filter error exception, the filter US is not valid for the system ID field on the country region table. Invalid format of GUID string. And I thought, well, that's weird. I must be doing something wrong. Tried it again, reread the error. The filter value of US, like the literal string US, is not valid for the system ID field on the country region table. Well, then I thought, this must be a Cronus sample data error. Like the country region code of US is just wasn't imported in a valid manner, so it's missing the corresponding system ID, something to that effect. But I went and checked all the customer records in the Cronus database I was using. They looked okay. They were properly referenced. The value was there. I did a lookup, selected US. It saved fine. No errors that I could tell. So I thought, there's maybe something else going on here. This doesn't look like an invalid data issue. So curiouser and curiouser. And so then I tried, instead of expand equals $, I did expand equals country region, just to rule out that there's something weird of expand equals $, going on. So I said, okay, it's complaining about country region. I looked up what the navigation property was for country region and added that specifically in the expand query filter or query parameter. So here I have sales credit memos $, expand equals country region. Exact same error. The filter US is not valid for the system ID field. Well, I'm not filtering anything. This is just like pretty straightforward web API call. So what is going on here? So why is there an error when I do this? And so I said, well, let me look into the actual AL code that is being run for this web API page. So I went into GitHub, went to the AL app extensions, and under the apps W1 API v2 source pages, you will find the API v2 sales credit memos page AL file. So I'm searching for country region, and I see there's a field sell to country, and there's another field bill to country, and it's a country region code. And like those are just fields. I couldn't find anything that could be going wrong here. It didn't make sense. It wasn't obvious, at least. So then I thought, well, wait a minute. I swear that I have researched and that I know how the expand property works and how you add something to a page to expand it and do the corresponding lookup, but I wasn't seeing that here. So then I had to ask my developer, like, wait, we've done this before. How come I'm not seeing the navigation property for countries and regions? So he reminded me that in the past, we've used the part keyword section object within an API page. So if you want to have a navigation property and use the expand, and in our case, it was a custom API page with a custom expand or navigation property, we added a part to that API page that pointed to a child page, so to speak, that would do the lookup and provide the child records that would be expanded. So I searched on that same sales credit memo page for different parts. I only found 4. Dimension set lines, sales credit memo lines, PDF document, and attachments. There is no part for country region. So how is the country region navigation property defined? So this is the result, the XML result from the metadata for the Business Central Web API. And I have a blog post on this as well. Blog.steveendo.com, search for metadata, I believe. And if you look at the metadata and then you search for the sales credit memo endpoint, you can scroll down and see these navigation properties, and there are like 10 of them. And it's like, wait a minute, we only see 4 parts in the actual API page. How are the other 6 being supplied? And you see navigation property, country region, like it's here. Obviously, expand is trying to call it when you do the expand equals $, or expand equals country region. It appears to be valid. So what's going on? And what is the term? Foreshadowing. Yes. Foreshadowing what's going to happen. Look at the second highlighted element. Referenced property equals ID. Keep that in the back of your mind. So where are these navigation properties defined if they're not at the field level and they're not in a page part in the API page? Like, how is this magically happening? Well, a couple places. You then dig into the next level and you ask, okay, where is the sales credit memo API page getting its data? Like, where's this data coming from? And in the header properties here, page properties, you'll see source table equals sales credit memo entity buffer. Okay, so it's like a temp table, it appears, and that's data is being assembled for those sales credit memos, and it's being displayed on the API page. Okay, so, we're another layer deep here. We're starting to dig down this rabbit hole. So what does that look like? Well, you can do this a couple different ways. I happen to have a copy of the Business Central code from Stefan Marone's repository where he tracks all the BC code history, all the AL code history. So I pulled up the sales credit memo entity buffer.table.al file, and I see bill to country region code 10. There's a sell to country region code 10. Now notice what I've highlighted in yellow. Table relation country / region. Okay. So the API page is pulling its data from a buffer table, and that buffer table has defined a table relation of country region. So AJ Kaufman and Jeremy Viska explained to me that it appears the Business Central Web API has an automatic method for creating navigation properties based off of table relations defined in the API table that is being referenced by a page. I did not know that. I previously only worked with page parts in the API pages in order to do those navigation properties to support expand. I didn't realize they could be done automatically through a table relation. But okay, so we see a table relation country region here. Why isn't it working? Why are we getting an error? Well, notice what's highlighted in green. Remember I told you about foreshadowing? Notice that the bill to country region code and the sell to country region code are code 10 data type. We don't have any other fields linking to the country region table. Okay, so what is going on here? Let's go another level deeper down the rabbit hole here. Let's take a look at the country region page, API page. If we go to API v2 countries regions page, you will see there is a page property called OData key fields. And AJ Kaufman explained this to me. And apparently, if you have this set up on an API page, it's either the page or table. It's not entirely clear to me, but let's just assume it's at the page level. Somehow, automagically, the Business Central Web API uses that table relation, pulls up this page in order to retrieve, like a subquery, the related child records. So in the case of the sales credit memo page, we have a country region field value, and that table has a table relation defined for the country region table. And somehow the Business Central Web API figures this out, says, oh, I can pull that information for you through the country regions page, and I'm going to use the OData key fields of system ID in order to determine that relationship. Well, what's the problem here? The problem is we do not have the system ID for the country region records that are being displayed on the sales credit memo page. So it's retrieving the code. It is not retrieving or displaying the system ID in order to complete the relationship for this OData key fields property on the country regions API page. And if you followed that one, hats off to you. It took me a while to figure out how this everything is linked. So if we keep this in mind, it's like, really, is that how this works? Well, if you go back, all the way back up to the sales credit memo API endpoint, look at the results. Look at what's highlighted in green here. We have a number, which would be the credit memo, like document number, S-CR1001, but right above that, we have an ID, which is a GUID. Look at the customer number 10,000, but we have a customer ID, which is a GUID. The bill to customer number is there. We have a bill to customer ID. So in these records where you're going to have a navigation property, the ID, presumably that's the system ID for that source table or that child record, is being supplied. And that apparently implicitly creates a navigation property through the table relation such that the BC Web API engine can go look up those child records and expand the data. Notice the sell to country and the bill to country highlighted in yellow. Those just have the code of US. There is no corresponding country ID for the sell to or bill to country records here. So the theory is that because the country ID is missing, the sell to country ID, the bill to country ID is missing from these result sets and the underlying buffer table, the table relationship cannot be completed, and therefore the OData key field cannot be linked by the Web API engine. So that's what I learned. I didn't know that there was an implicit navigation property available without having to do your own page part explicitly. I didn't know that the Web API engine automatically made the relationships or detected the relationships through a table relation through a field and displayed those as navigation properties in the metadata. And I didn't know if you rely upon that method for your expand and navigation properties in your API results, that you have to have the system ID along with your code or value or whatever in your result set or in your underlying source table in order to make that relationship work. So what's the solution? From what I've been told, I think the solution is that Microsoft would have to add the sell to country ID and the bill to country ID in these result sets or in the underlying buffer table in order for the Web API to make those relationships work. And that would be through the table relation and through the OData key fields. I think something about that automatically makes those link up such that these navigation properties work. And here you see the navigation property, it's being generated automatically. So country region reference property is ID. We don't have the country region ID, so it can't make that relationship. And you'll notice that, so I see currency, so I see customer financial data. Maybe I clipped this on the screenshot, but I'm not seeing the customer relationship. So let's take a look at that and see. So here, let's go back to metadata, and it's just on the fly here. So let's search for sales credit memo. See if I clip that in the screenshot. So we see property, customer number, customer name, and customers can be expanded here. Oh, there it is. Yep, I must have clipped it on the screenshot. So name, navigation property. Let me make this bigger. Sorry. Okay, so if you can see that behind my big head, I can't hide this, unfortunately. Oh, there I can. Okay. So you see navigation property, name, equals customer, and the referential constraint is customer ID, reference property equals ID. Now, you'll notice it is possible to use something other than the system ID. So dimension value has a property of shortcut dimension 1 code, reference property of code. Now, I don't know if it's possible to reference, say, the country region based on just the code. I don't know if that makes sense, but it seems to not be the way that most records are referenced. I think I searched and only a few things are referenceable based on their code. The vast majority, it's like the de facto design pattern for this, is to use the ID, the system ID, as the way to make that relationship work. So you see here, property customer ID is referenced based on the ID. And what's interesting is how, I don't know how it handles things like ship to versus bill to. Somehow it is handling that. So let's see. Yeah, so here we have both the bill to and sell to. I don't know if you need two different relationships for that. So lots of questions. I'm not an expert on how this works. It's just this one little question. It's always one little thing, right? Seems to have started a journey where I'm digging up this stuff and just discovering and uncovering how some of these mechanics and how some of this plumbing works. And this was really interesting because although I had worked with a page part, I didn't even realize there were automatic navigation properties occurring in the BC Web API. And it was only through testing with the sales credit memo and the expand equals star that I happened to get this error, which happened to uncover the country region relationship error. If I would have done this on another endpoint, the expand star may have worked perfectly and I would have never realized that this was going on under the hood. So very interesting. You know, whenever you think you understand how something works, either at a high level or at a granular level, like the page part and the table relations and the expand and navigation properties, turns out there's a whole nother universe behind the scenes. So with that, hope that was interesting. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed that journey down yet another Business Central rabbit hole. So check it out, play with Postman, try expand equals star, see if you can find anything else that doesn't work properly. And yeah, have a good one. Talk to you later.
Good morning, sun.